Welcome back to the recap room, where true stories feel stranger than fiction. Today, we're diving into one of the most charming cat and mouse chases in movie history. Catch Me If You Can, a story so wild, it's hard to believe it actually happened. A teenage con artist who fooled the FBI, the airlines, and basically the entire world. Yeah, this kid was doing identity theft before most of us were learning long division. So buckle up and brace for spoilers. This one flies high, crashes low, and takes us on one unforgettable ride. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe for more videos like these. Meet Frank Abagnale Jr., a sharp, wide-eyed kid living the American dream in New Rochelle, New Jersey. His father, Frank Sr., is a smooth-talking salesman with charm for days, and his mother, Paula, is a graceful French woman who adds a dash of elegance to their world. Together, they're the picture of success. At a fancy Rotary Club ceremony, Frank Sr. receives an award for his success, flashing that confident smile that hides a mountain of problems. Young Frank watches proudly, idolizing his father's swagger. Back at home, Frank Sr. tells the story of how he met Paula, his beautiful French wife, while little Frank Jr. dances with her in the living room. They laugh, the record spins, and for a moment, the Abagnales feel perfect. Paula accidentally spills red wine on the carpet, and young Frank rushes off to grab a towel. When he returns, he catches his parents swaying gently to Ella Fitzgerald's Embraceable You. It's a tender, movie-like scene, the kind a kid never forgets. But the next morning, reality hits. Frank Sr. wakes his son early and says, "Skip school. We've got a big meeting." They drive to a tailor shop, where Frank Sr., ever the charmer, tries to borrow a suit. When the woman refuses, he pulls out a gold necklace from his pocket. Smooth talk and confidence in every word. Minutes later, they pull up to Chase Manhattan Bank. Father and son, both in sharp suits, both dreaming big, even as the walls begin to close in. Still, Frank Sr. never lets go of his charm. When he takes his son to the bank to ask for a loan, he teaches him a life lesson disguised as baseball trivia. You know why the Yankees always win? Because everyone's too busy staring at the pinstripes. Translation? Distraction is power. And little Frank? He's taking notes. Frank Sr. then walks into the bank, but charm can't fix everything. The bank manager, polite but cold, explains that his loan request can't be approved, not while he's under investigation for tax fraud. That smile finally cracks. Frank Sr. leaves empty-handed, trading in his shiny Cadillac for a modest Chevy. The fall from grace has begun. One by one, the family's luxuries vanish until they're forced to leave their home. On Frank Jr.'s 16th birthday, his father gifts him a checkbook with $25 in it, a small seed of independence that'll soon grow into something much, much bigger. Frank Jr. transfers to a public school, still wearing his old private school uniform because, well, old habits die hard. The local bullies notice immediately, and one shoves him. But instead of sulking, Frank improvises. Frank Jr. walks into class, still in his private school uniform, when a kid blurts out, "Are you a sub?" An idea clicks. Why not? With sudden authority, Frank commands, "Everyone, take your seats." Shockingly, they obey. He seizes the moment to teach, improvise, and, most importantly, humiliate the bully who shoved him earlier. The boy turns red, stammers, and the class can't stop laughing. Weeks later, the principal calls in his parents, revealing that Frank Jr. has been running the class for weeks. His father can't even hide his pride. The apple didn't just fall near the tree. It learned how to sell fake apples. But life at home takes a darker turn. Frank catches his mother with another man, his father's friend. The betrayal shatters him. Soon after, he's handed divorce papers and asked to choose between his parents. Imagine being 16, pen in hand, forced to decide who you love more. He can't. So he runs. He runs away from home, from heartbreak, from everything. And just like that, the perfect son becomes a fugitive dreamer. For months, Frank drifts between hotels and cheap rooms, alone and broke. Frank uses his father's checkbook to survive, forging signatures, cashing fake checks, and living one scam at a time. Learning the ropes of forging documents and manipulating tellers. Rejection after rejection piles up, each failure sharpening his cunning. It's small-time stuff, until he spots something that changes everything. A pilot steps out of a cab, surrounded by adoring flight attendants, dressed sharp, confident, respected. To Frank, this man is untouchable, a symbol of authority. And in his mind, he thinks, if I can't be real, I'll be convincing. So he hatches a plan. Pretending to be a student journalist, he interviews a Pan Am pilot, absorbing every detail about the job. From uniform design to ID cards, he studies, imitates, and perfects. Eventually, he forges his own Pan Am uniform, complete with fake badges and payroll checks. Now dressed as a pilot, Frank walks into banks with unshakable confidence. And suddenly, everyone treats him differently. He's no longer a broke teenager. He's a man of the sky. And guess what? The checks start clearing. Frank becomes a globe-trotting imposter, traveling for free as a deadhead, a pilot catching flights for repositioning. He charms crew members, cashes forged checks, and lives like royalty. The kid who once faked being a teacher now fakes being an airline captain, and he's making millions while doing it. One afternoon, Frank surprises his father with a shiny new Cadillac. Frank Sr. is touched, but refuses to drive it. The IRS would raise eyebrows. Emotions well up when Frank Jr. mentions his mother, and for a moment, the weight of their fractured family hits them both. Still, Frank Sr. vows to keep fighting to bring their family back together, a promise that fuels Frank Jr.'s hope more than anything else. Of course, every magician needs an audience, and Frank's about to meet his toughest critic yet. Meet Carl Hanratty, the grumpiest, most relentless FBI agent you'll ever see. He's the kind of guy who never smiles at Christmas and reads bank ledgers for fun. When a series of forged checks lands on his desk, he sees a pattern, a ghost, a phantom fraudster who always slips away just in time. Carl manages to arrive at the hotel Frank is currently staying in. Carl storms into the hotel, determined to finally catch Frank. He bursts down the hallway, gun drawn, heart racing, the full FBI dramatic entrance. Meanwhile, Frank is strolling casually toward his room, casually greeting Mr. Murphy, a blind old man being guided by his companion. Frank quips, slipping past. Carl throws open the door, gun pointed. "Freeze! FBI!" he shouts, ready to nab the kid. Frank steps out of the bathroom, all calm and collected, and with a straight face says, "Agent Barry Allen, Secret Service." Carl blinks. "Secret Service? Really?" Carl demands ID, and Frank casually gestures to the window. "Don't worry, my partner's already apprehending the criminal." Carl peeks out and sees Mr. Murphy being escorted to his car. Frank smirks. Carl slowly lowers his gun, muttering something about needing a vacation. With a grin, Frank waltzes out, leaving his wallet behind. Carl slumps onto the bed, opens it, and finds it emptier than his hope of catching Frank. He looks out the window. Frank is already sprinting away, probably humming a James Bond theme. Hanratty stands there, realizing he just got conned. And the chase? It's only just begun. Frank's confidence is through the roof. After fooling the FBI, he's officially the James Bond of the sky, at least according to a newspaper headline that calls him the Skyway Man inspired. Frank leans into the fantasy. He buys the same car, the same suit, and even the same swagger as James Bond himself. The kid who once ran from home now lives like a movie star. Then Frank checks into a fancy hotel and meets a charming woman who's clearly impressed by his pilot credentials. Let's just say, the night goes really well for Frank. But while Frank's playing spy, Agent Carl Hanratty is still alone at his desk on Christmas Eve, the only guy in the office without a family to go home to. Then the phone rings. It's Frank. The kid actually calls him just to say sorry for tricking him. He even tries to set up a meeting at some hotel, like they're old buddies. Carl's not buying it for a second. He laughs and tells Frank, "You're only calling me because you've got no one else to talk to." That one stings. Frank hangs up, and Carl just sits there, grinning, because, well, he's kinda right. Days later, Carl looks up the name Frank gave him, Barry Allen. He finds several people listed under that name. A young waiter notices the papers on his hand and asks if Carl is a fan of Barry Allen, the real name of the comic book hero The Flash. That's when Carl realizes the truth. Frank isn't a professional criminal. He's just a kid. With this new clue, Carl contacts his team and asks them to search through missing child reports. Eventually, they find Frank's mother, Paula, who has since remarried. She cooperates with the FBI and gives them a yearbook photo of her son, allowing Carl to finally identify Frank by name. Meanwhile, Frank is enjoying his new life. He spends his money freely and begins throwing parties, living in luxury far from his old home. Frank keeps running, but his loneliness starts showing. After throwing one of his wild parties, a friend's accident sends him to the hospital, where he meets Brenda, a sweet, kind-hearted nurse. For the first time, Frank feels something real. He pretends to be a doctor named Frank Connors, lands a medical job, and somehow bluffs his way into supervising other doctors. Yes, this kid, who can barely spell stethoscope, is now saving lives, or at least pretending to. At the hospital, Frank and Brenda grow closer, and their friendship slowly turns into romance. One day, while they're in Frank's office, they share a gentle kiss, a moment that feels real and warm. But before they can say anything more, Frank gets called to the emergency room. There, the staff looks to him for help with a young boy who was in a bike accident. Though Frank has no real medical training, he confidently gives a few quick instructions and manages to walk away without anyone suspecting a thing. Meanwhile, Carl meets Frank Sr., the man behind the con. And it's easy to see where Frank Jr. got his charm. When asked about his son, Frank Sr. says proudly, "I'll never give him up." But the man's eyes tell another story, one of guilt and lost pride. Frank's relationship with Brenda deepens. He wants to stop running. He even proposes. When they meet Brenda's family, Frank doubles down on the lies, pretending to be both a doctor and a lawyer, because why not? When Brenda's father offers him a job at his law firm, Frank actually takes the Louisiana bar exam and somehow passes. But beneath all the success, Frank's haunted by his broken family. When he visits his father, he learns that Paula, his mother, has remarried. His dream of reuniting the family is dead. His father, ever the dreamer, tells him to keep running. So he does. It's Christmas Eve again, and Frank calls Carl one more time. He tells him he's getting married and wants a truce. Carl gently replies, "You know I have to catch you." Frank sighs, wishes him Merry Christmas, and hangs up. Two men, on opposite sides of the law, both alone, both tired. But that short call gives Carl a new clue. Frank isn't planning to change his name now that he's getting married. Following the trail, Carl soon shows up, right at Frank and Brenda's wedding party. As Frank and Brenda celebrate, Carl walks in, and Frank's instincts kick in. He rushes to his room, with Brenda right behind him. Out of time and out of lies, Frank finally tells her the truth, everything. He begs her to meet him at the airport in 2 days so they can run away together. The two share a heartbreaking goodbye, their love cut short just as it began. Moments later, Carl bursts into the room, but Frank is already gone. 2 days later, Frank waits anxiously at the airport, scanning every face. Then, he sees her, Brenda, in a pink top, clutching her luggage. For a moment, his heart soars until he notices her hand twitching toward an earpiece. She's wired. The FBI is here. With his heart sinking, Frank takes one last look, and he disappears before they can catch him. By recruiting a team of beautiful women, giving them Pan Am uniforms, and walking straight past security with his crew, every man at the airport is too busy staring at the flight attendants to notice the world's most wanted con artist strolling out the front door. That's what we call the power of distraction, folks. Months pass. Most agents have given up. Only Carl keeps going. Then he makes a discovery. The checks Frank's been using aren't fake. They're real checks printed with professional equipment. The kind you'd find overseas. Carl remembers Frank's French mother. Could he be hiding in her hometown? He heads to Montrachet, France. Snow falls, church bells ring, and inside a dimly lit factory, Frank is surrounded by counterfeit checks. When Carl walks in, Frank doesn't run. He looks tired, like he's been carrying the world. Carl gently tells him the French police plan to kill him out of embarrassment. "Come with me," he says. "Let me take you home." Frank agrees. For the first time, he surrenders. Frank is imprisoned in France under brutal conditions. He almost dies before Carl negotiates his extradition to the US. On the flight back, Carl delivers devastating news. Frank's father has passed away. Shattered, Frank escapes mid-flight and runs home, hoping to see his mother. But when he gets there, he sees her with a new husband and a young daughter. His family truly moved on. There's nothing left to chase. Frank stops running. He turns himself in. He's sentenced to 12 years in prison. But Carl, ever the realist, sees potential in the kid. During one visit, Frank instantly spots a forgery trick the FBI missed. Impressed, Carl convinces the Bureau to release Frank early, under one condition: he must work for them. And so, The con artist becomes the crime fighter. At first, the agents don't trust him. But over time, Frank proves invaluable. One weekend, old habits tempt him again. He dons a pilot uniform, stands at an airport gate, and hesitates. Carl finds him there and says quietly, "No one's chasing you anymore." The words hit like a punch. Monday morning, Frank walks back into the FBI office and sits beside Carl, ready to work. For the first time, he's home. Based on a true story, Frank Abagnale Jr. went on to become one of the world's leading experts in bank fraud and forgery. He's been married for over 26 years and lives a quiet life with his wife and 3 sons, occasionally giving lectures to banks about, ironically, how not to get scammed. And Carl Hanratty? Still his friend. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon for more wild stories that prove sometimes truth really is stranger than fiction.